All right, give it a moment for it to actually go live. So, we'll go. Of course, technically, there should already be an audience here waiting for us to start up.
A huge audience.
Oh, well, we'll wait for the commercial break. Here, you all see the commercial. Everyone that went on a lot, that clicked right away on the Twitch link. Because Amazon's got to get its money.
See if I can get in a spot that makes me look less fat, Chad. There we go.
Yeah.
That's better. Yeah, stand next to me.
You're probably the one who will get up a shirt on. Who was I talking to? Oh, I was talking to the Downs the other night. And Martine was like, oh, yeah, I remember last time I was a dev, there was you and Jesse Phillips and Lee Brandt. I'm like, how did you even see me with those two? So Lee Brandt and Jesse are really tall.
Well, Lee is like Hagrid.
Yeah.
Like.
All right. I see we're actually live. Okay, well, we're not going to see the slides, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. No, I can do that. I just have to click the right button. No, we would see his slides. We just want to see.
I haven't shared anything yet. So.
Oh, yeah. Come on. Share screen.
Technology is hard.
It is. There we go.
Wow.
Well, they'll eventually see it there. See, that's the other hard part. Actually, this might be a little bit distracting because that's going to be delayed.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
That's going to make more sense.
Right on.
I mean, you still will be in the stream there so that we can stream it. Okay. Hey, we are a technology group, but that doesn't mean we know it about technology. Cool. All right. So, hey, everyone, welcome. This is just how my day's been going. So a couple, you all can't see slides, but so I don't really go through. So first, want to thank our sponsors, right? Tech for bringing food. See, now we don't have to worry if Dan gets a call all of a sudden. And then, Slingshot for providing space. As far as upcoming meetups, so next month will be a little bit of an interesting month. We've got David Jarrett's going to be coming in virtually, but so am I. So, because I'm actually going to be in Nebraska. David will be in Chicago. Dan's going to be here in Louisville. So we're going to make it work. When I scheduled the meetup, I just completely ignored the fact that I was out of town that week. I'm normally pretty good about that. But so we're going to have David Jarrett. He's going to be talking about empowering AI. And then in August, because we can't get enough AI, I'm going to do a presentation about basically building apps, .NET apps using AI, which means I'll have to learn how to do that. So that was fun because actually today, the last couple of days I've been at an offsite doing architectural planning, and we got to the point. Oh yeah, here we actually could a valid use case of using AI. And I'm like, yeah, sure enough. Supposedly by August, I'm going to give a presentation. I'm going to be the expert on it. So we'll see about that. All right. So upcoming events. So, there's in driving distance. So sure enough, you got Scenic Cities next week. So you don't have a whole lot of time before that. But that was a nice conference. Cynthia Liver. Speaking of Liver? Yeah, I thought so. So both of us will be there. Actually, I'll be at all these things. I'm a glutton for punishment. But that is a really great event. I really do highly recommend it. It's a one-day Friday event, really low priced, right? So, and then sure enough, in August, which both of us will be there, it will be DEVA. So that's in St. Louis. So that's a 3-day conference. So the first day is all the workshops, and then you have 2 days of sessions. What are you going to be talking about there? You don't remember?
I don't remember. Something.
I don't remember. I know I'm doing a workshop. I know what the workshop is, but I can't remember.
I think one's on interviewing, and I forget what the other one is.
So it's definitely some great events. If you're looking for more, if you want to travel more, talk to me and I'll tell you about even more stuff. Like I said, come join me in Berlin. That's the one. Come join me with. All right, and then I talked about this last month. So we do have a new GitHub repo for the meetup. Right, so github.com/tailorandcode/blue.net. So lots of words put together, but so like I spoke last month. I put my slides up there, right? And if Mike is willing to put up his slides, he'll put his slides up there. No pressure, because I always tell speakers that it's completely up to them. And then finally, most everyone here has been here before, but if you haven't, afterwards we like to go out to Burke House just to grab a drink of some type and maybe some food and just talk, right, and socialize, right. So we'll do that. All right. So with that, I can't close this. See, almost like, I'm done. No, I'm actually the one who's streaming this whole thing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and so no one's been on camera, but that's all right. Now we're on camera on there. It'll show up here in a moment because again we're delayed a little bit.
Okay.
So with that, I'm gonna turn it. And sure enough, Mike tweaked his back, so that's why he's sitting.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's not because he's a lazy bum.
If it looks like I'm in pain, it's because I am. It's that thing when you get some of you guys, I can tell you know what I'm talking about, where you sneeze or you turn and all of a sudden your back is out for a day. That's where I'm at. I think that ibuprofen is kicking in, but I'm going to sit just like this for the next hour. But no, I appreciate Chad for inviting me down. Like I said, we've known each other for a long, long time, and it's nice to come back down. And I wish it wasn't like 1 billion degrees outside, because we're going to spend the next couple of days kind of being tourists before we go back home. But Chad's right. I sent him a list of, here's a bunch of talks that I've been doing, and he's like, how about that one? And I think I probably replied back, really, that one? So I like doing this one. Don't get me wrong. This is a fun one, but it's one of my few tech talks. So I think I sacrificed to the demo gods. I think I'm good, but we'll see how this goes. So we're going to talk about something called Spectre.Console, which is a library for .NET. And this is going to be like a very high-level discussion of this thing. But before I kind of get started, so I work for a company called Improving. We're a consulting company. Got a couple offices in Ohio, but they're all over the U.S. But it's a great company, and they are supporting my being out in the community. So there's their slide. So the goal of this session really is to just introduce you to Spectre.Console and explore its capabilities. A good friend of mine, when he gave tech talks years ago, used to say, I'm an enthusiast, not an expert. So that's what I'm going to say on this. I like this library. It's very cool. I'm also going to show you another one that I think is also very cool. That it'll do some of the same types of things. But I want to talk a little bit about console applications. So and again, looking at the group here, I'm guessing a lot of you, same kind of thing. I kind of grew up in the world of DOS and Windows 3.1. And so for me, it was, being in a command line was just the thing I did. And so that's kind of how I learned how to do this. So I have a special place in my heart for console applications, for command line applications. But if you use any of these things on the screen, Git, Docker, Azure CLI, NPM, .NET, right? All those are console applications. So everyone should be, if you use those, and I think most of us probably do, we do use them. But when we talk about consoles, a console application runs inside a terminal, which is kind of a host that runs a shell. So for example, on my Mac, I'm running Z shell inside of iTerm. On Windows, I run my Z shell inside of Windows Terminal, or maybe Git Bash, or maybe PowerShell. But those are the things that allow me to run it, or in other programs and things. And we'll be in my iTerm, in my Z shell here in a little bit, because I'm going to do some things live. Some of it is on slides, but I will go live for a little bit to show a couple of things. So I'm going to max. I don't want to go into presenter mode, because then it gets really weird switching back and forth between things. But really, this is just a couple of examples of console applications. So for example, my blog that I so far in the month of June, I've written every day. And I'm trying to make it through the entire month. But my blog uses something called Jekyll, which is a static site generator. So on the left-hand side is Jekyll running, and that's showing the site being built every time I make a change. The other side is where I'm doing all my Git stuff. This is an example of, I've got a bunch of stuff running. So the cool thing is with like iTerm or even Windows Terminal, what is going on over there?
They're like cleaning, they're buffing the carpet.
Oh, right on. All right.
So Dan he's taking care of it.
All right. But the cool thing is with a lot of the terminals we have now, like Windows Terminal or iTerm for the Mac, you can break one screen up into many. So I tend to have multiple panes. So this is when I'm running one of my projects recently. This is the back end running, the front end running. This is the database is running in Docker. So this is 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 things running in the command line apps, all running. So just examples of things we do every day. and what we're talking about. So the this is awesome. This is great. I wonder how well it's okay. I wonder how well it's picking up on mic. So in .NET natively, you can do a lot of stuff at the console, right? Most of us know console.writeLine, console.write, console.read, console.readLine. We do those things all the time. In fact, when I first started, kind of when .NET was fresh in that 2002 timeframe, that's how I learned. Is I would do .NET New. Actually, it wasn't at the time I couldn't do .NET New, but I would create console apps to be able to show things like Hello World and those types of things. And now with it's really easy to create a new console app, and we'll kind of go through that if you've never done it. But you can do some things in the with native.NET before you pull in anything like a Spectre.Console or something else. And this is just showing an example, and I'll show you what the code looks like next. But you can change the output, change the color of the output. It's kind of a pain, which we'll see with the next bit of code. And so I can bring this up in an editor if we want to zoom in. This is just a screenshot because, again, demo gods. But you can see here, this is just a series of console.write lines, but lines 2 and 3 are where I'm setting the console.background color, console.foreground color, and I'm just setting those to, it's blue and white. But the thing is, that will stay those colors until I do a console, what is it, dot reset color, and then that will set it back. So I have to be very explicit about how I change things. And if we look further down, in fact, let me see if this will help. Yeah, it's better, isn't it? So if we look down here, if I wanted to change individual letters, then I have to do that. I have to say, here's the foreground color, here's the letter, here's the foreground color, here's the letter, and so it can be very tedious to do that. Now, you can wrap that in a function and make it work, but just by default, this is how you would do it. You'd set foreground color, background color, anything like that will work. Now, if you want to get fancy, you're gonna have to start getting into like interop and Windows APIs. But so that's, if you want to do this kind of thing, that's what you're going to do. And you can see here, that's where I did you can get fancy down here, but we're going to get fancier when you see what it looks like in Spectre, because it's a ton easier. You can also do, as you guys, like I said, I write a lot of console apps. So you can ask for input. This is, again, native functionality. So I would do a console.write line, and then I would do a console.read or a console.read line to read that information in that they typed. And then if I wanted to have any validation on it, I'd have to write my own validation. And this is kind of what that would look like. So I have my write lines, and then I ask, string.name equals console.readLine, right? And that gives me whatever they entered into a variable, and I could do stuff with it. But you'll see here, like with the age, I need to parse that, make sure they actually entered a legit value for age, because otherwise it's just a string. So if I want to validate, then I'm either writing code that looks like that, which is kind of gross, or I'm going to pull in like Fluent Validator or something like that to make sure that what they've entered is a legit value. And you see, this is just really simple. All I did was parse it as an int, and if it fails, then I'm just going to say, hey, it failed. I will tell you that with the native console functionality, not all of it is cross-platform. And so that's something that you have to be aware of with the native functionality, right? There are some things that might work on Windows that aren't necessarily going to work on a Mac. Even though it's .NET, even though it's cross-plat, there may be some things that won't work. So you can find that out in the docs. If you're trying to do just native stuff, you can look in the docs and then figure it'll show you right at the top of in learn.microsoft.com. When you go to one of the functions, it'll tell you what the compatibility is with the platform. Spectre.Console, I didn't update these numbers, but my guess is it's probably closer to 8 million since the last time I gave this. It's downloaded a lot. It's used a lot. Got a lot of stars on GitHub. we'll look at the website and the repo here, but this is all open source. If you want to see how things work, you can do it. So I'm going to do a quick tour of the repo. Here we go. Try not to make people sick as I scroll. The repo. So it's just github.com/Spectre.Console/Spectre.Console. And you pull the code, look at it. It's got examples, all sorts of things. And we're going to tour some of this in more detail here. But you can see it'll tell you how to install it, right? It's just a NuGet package. Just add Spectre.Console and you've got it. Nothing more to do. The cool thing is you can install examples. So if you want to kind of see the whole thing in play with their examples, you can do this, and we'll do this here in a little bit, and we should be good to go to run those. So that's the repo. It'll take you to the docs, and you can see here, just from this, you can see lots of things you can do. And we'll get into that. And then there's the website, which is the documentation, which will, again, dive in a little bit more into how the whole thing works. You can see same screenshot. And I tend to reference this a fair amount because there's some things I just don't remember how to do. But we'll get into that in the demo. So, that slide got messed up. But here's the deal. If you want to, there's 4 packages you can add. Spectre.Console is the base default. The console.cli is if you want to handle command line arguments, which we'll look at. There's a JSON parser, and then there's if you want to do images. And when I say do images, it'll be back to your DOS days of 8-bit art. And again, the source code comes with everything. But there's just some snippets that we just looked at. Same thing in the repo here. So those are the ones you want to add. Now, with Spectre, you can do everything I just showed you that you could do in native.net, but oh my God, it's so much easier. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a lazy developer. I don't want to have to work too hard to do some of this stuff. So you can see here, this is the output, and I'll show you the code. Now, remember the native code was long because I had to like set the colors. I had to do write the line. I had to reset the color. I had to change the color. I had to do all sorts of things to get any kind of output that looked anything outside of the default. I had to do a lot of work to get there. And you can see here, there are other things I can do here in Spectre, bold and underline and strike through. You don't get it here because this is an image, but you can there's a blink tag, which is kind of sweet. So if I want to flashback to the 90s web development, you can have a blink tag. And this is what this looks like. And so this is much tighter code. To do everything I just showed you on that previous screenshot, this is the code to do it. And now you'll notice I am mixing in some console.write lines with the Spectre version, which is ANSI console.write line. So basically these are ANSI codes that are being sent to the screen, and that's how we're getting the colors and everything. But you can see here on this line, I simply specify I want white text on blue, white on blue. So there's a list of colors that you can specify, and that's the documentation. It's here's all the colors you can possibly use there, and the color palette is pretty rich. So you can do all sorts of things, but that's what I would do. So I would just say ANSI console.markup line. So that's how you have to consider it. It's markup, and it's just in these tags, and it's just a square bracket with what you want, and then you have to close the tag at the end, and that's what's happening here. Let me zoom that in a little bit more, and that's what's happening here. The thing is, I don't need to clear colors. I can just go on to the next line and do whatever I want to do, and in that line, if I want it back to normal, that's all I do is just put whatever text I want. Now you see here, this one, ANSI console.markup line, I have the word U is red, the word can is green, and then this is where I change individual characters in that. And you can see I have blue and yellow and purple and fuchsia and teal and dark cyan and red. There's different shades of red. That's red 1. There's slate blue, there's maroon. And so if we look back, if we look back here, that's this, or the word characters. So that's where I was able to change each one. Instead of doing a console.foreground color C, console.foreground color H, right? I can do it all in one line, which is nice. And I can have these tags, and you can pull these things from anywhere, right? From your database. And so you could mark up your text the way you want. And you can see to mark something as bold, it's just a bold tag. Underline is an underline tag. Strike through, there's the blink tag. And I can show you that in action. The other cool thing is you can do actual links that you can click on from the console. So if you wanted to spit something out, let's say you were running, I don't know, running some process that ended up generating.
I'll give you a perfect example because I'm using this.
Okay.
So I've got a process. It clones a repo. It actually updates the readmes on the Terraform stuff, and then does a push, and then creates a PR, and then gives the link to the PR, and you can click right there, so then you can go and improve your PR and get it closed. Really nice. So
all sorts of things you can do, and then the same thing too. You can do emojis if you want, if that's kind of the vibe of your app. If you want emojis in it, cool. It's really easy to do. You can see it's typical like markup that you would use for emojis and a lot of chat apps. So that's kind of Spectre in a nutshell. Now I want to point out that the Spectre is really meant as a to display static data. So when we're talking about building console applications, this really is about static data. We can build trees and charts and other things, and I'll show those. And it's really about outputting text and those types of things to the screen. If you want something more interactive, I'm going to take about 2 minutes here in a little bit and talk about terminal.gui, which is another library that lets you do windows on this in a terminal, which is kind of cool. So the markup is influenced by something called BB code, and I can't, hold on, because I'm not in presenter view, but let me snag this and we'll just jump over there real quick and we can look at what, oops. If I can copy. So BB code, they kind of give the history here, was something that was, that this is based on. So instead of just a B, of course, with Spectre, we have the word bold, right? Those types of things. But this is kind of the lineage where it came from, where that markup came from. Oops. Some things you can do that are kind of cool. Actually, I'm going to jump over to demos for a bit now because I want to show some of this. So I have a couple of demos. The first one, okay, so I'm going to do a couple of file renames here because when I first started building this talk, I had this really great idea. And we'll talk here about why it ended up not being a good idea, but I want to show you anyway. So I'm just going to rename. I have two mains, and I just need to make sure they don't conflict here. So my first thought for this talk was to build the whole thing in Spectre, build the slides in Spectre. So I've got 4 or 5 built, but it's super tedious to do when you have PowerPoint. I can just drag stuff. But I have this where I can actually arrow forward. So this is what I'm talking about with images. I can show an image. This is a high quality PNG. but you can see what it does. But I can kind of, I was arrowing through. So these are some of the things you can do. You can have layouts. And I got so far on this and I was like, okay, this is super tedious, but I have like this framework here for if I wanted to build a console based slide deck, I could. But here's some things. This control is called a figlet. So if you want the big ASCII letters, super easy to do. But I did want to show that. Figure out which, there it is. So let me rename that file again, and I'll show you the other thing that I did. So, but that actually, so I use JetBrains Rider as my IDE. I don't want that. I want that. That good? Okay. So, and this is all this is. This is that basically while keys are being pressed, left arrow, right arrow, going through the things. But that figlet, this is all this is. So when you think of Spectre.Console, it has a bunch of controls, widgets. And so outside of things like just writing text like ANSI console, we can build tables, we can build trees, we can do those types of things. So those are things that you would instantiate. In this case, I'm instantiating the figlet text. I'm specifying that I want it centered, and I'm specifying the color. And I'm putting it in a panel, which is, again, another one of their controls. And then I'm just kind of combining them all. And then all I do is I just write that out to the screen, ANSI console.write, with the control in it, and it knows how to render it. But what I want to show is rename. I wanted to show something a little more real that wasn't like real work that I can't share. So let me close that one. So this one, we're going to go over here. And yeah, this one. Okay. As long as I'm on Wi-Fi, I should be good. Okay. So this one I wanted to show. So here, ignore my warnings. I tried to get rid of the warnings, and I just, you know how it is. Demoware, the warnings can stay. Down here is what I want to show. So this is some different controls. So the first one I want to show is this idea of multi-select. So I have a list of zip codes that are in a app settings file. It's just a comma separated list of zip codes. I read those out of the config, split them, boom. I'll show you how I added them to this control. But what I can do here is I can arrow up and down this list, and with a space bar, I can select whatever I want. So in this case, I'm just going to select a couple, and then I'll show you what happens with the other ones. But I'm going to select my current zip code. One of these is a Louisville zip code. I just forget which one it is. 40201. That sound right? And then I have like there's a Seattle and a San Francisco, and because the logic I wrote, I wanted somewhere where there was a cool temperature, and so it was hard today. I was Googling like current temperature in, and I wanted something that wasn't 90 degrees. Anyway, so I can multi-select there, and you can see underneath this, there's some instructions. Move up and down to reveal more. So I have it only showing 10 at a time, but if I scroll, you can see the list will shift. And I forgot must be a remove a space or something. But then it says press space to log a selection and enter to basically close out your selection. So I've selected a couple here. And now what's going to happen is another control is going to come up briefly, and it's all going to depend on the Wi-Fi here and how long that stays up. But it's going to be a little, almost a spinner on the screen that's going to say, hey, I'm doing something. This is actually going to go out and hit a live API, and it's going to pull data back, and it's going to display it in another control. So I'll hit enter here, and you can see yes, it was that fast, but it was a little spinner. and saying fetching weather data. And now you can see here. So this is another control. This is a table control. And I could specify columns, and then I add rows. And the code for this is really straightforward. And then I have, there's a couple of these, what are those called? What are
The
those?
really cool part about the spinner is you can choose what character.
Yeah.
Spun.
Yeah, those are bar charts. So these are just bar charts. And what I wanted to show is, so of the data that was returned, how many of them were under 70 degrees, what was between 70 and 80, and how many were over 80. And given what I just selected, none of these. So Reynoldsburg, Watterson Park, I guess that's the one around here, Bellevue, Washington, and Elk Grove Village in around Chicago, right? Which, look, it's storming there. But I wanted to be able to represent that data in different ways. So imagine the same thing. You're at work, you're building something that's these would pretty much be for the nerds, right? That are going to consume these types of apps. So I want to pull some data back. I want to say, hey, here's the data, but then I want a little breakdown via a chart of some kind. And there's pie charts, there's line charts, there's different kinds of charts you can do. And so those are, if we look here, so this is just the setting up. So originally I had the zip codes just in hard coded, and I got tired of having to rebuild every time I wanted to add one. So if I look at app settings now, you can see there they are. So we could add other ones if you guys want, and it'll just work. And there's my, oh yeah, don't look at that. Oops. That's okay. It's I'll kill that account. So I pull, and then this is where I'm doing that prompt to say, here's your selection. So this is a multi-selection prompt, and I give it a title, and I give it a page size. Remember, I said it was 10, so it'll show 10 on the screen initially until I arrow down, and then it'll scroll. And there's that text that showed up underneath to say, hey, keep moving down to show more. There's your instructions. And then I add my choices. And all I did here was I just added a list, and it put them in there. So if you were to pull this from a database, if you were to pull those zip codes or whatever you wanted to display from somewhere else, you could do that and add them. Now, because not required is set, I don't have to pick any of them. So I just have a little default here. So let me flip back over here. And if I run this again, and this time I'm just gonna hit enter. And it won't select any of them, but it's going to, by default, use them all. And you'll see there's that spinner I was talking about, since it's fetching more data. And then there's all the zip codes I have in that array. Pulls them all. And now you can see there's actually one out of all those that's under 70 degrees. And that is San Francisco, is a 58 degrees right now. And yeah, look, Chicago's about 70. I'd take that. Back home, it's
right there.
huh?
It's been super hot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a thunderstorm rolling through. So, but you can see. So I use a open weather data API. So it gives me back a bunch of different information. So I just show that, the real feel, the description. Now, what I'd wanted to do is in this table have a little icon for like the weather condition, because that's something I get back from the API as well. And it looked really terrible. Like, because the icon is small anyway, and then it's this garbled 8-bit nastiness anyway, it's really hard to even tell what it was. So I pulled it out. But you can see, the API pulls back humidity and dew points and all that kind of stuff. But these are some of the things you can do. And one of the apps, what I can tell you a little bit about, one of the apps that I wrote, I love Azure DevOps, right? But I hate going to Azure DevOps. So because there's times where teams will be in multiple repos, and I want to be able to get some information from those open PRs, for example, without having to go pop open 3 or 4 tabs. So I wrote a console app that hits the Azure DevOps API, and it will pull back all the open PRs for multiple repos and will show me in a format like this, again, with links and everything. I can click and go look at them, which is kind of cool. So those are some things you can do with Spectre.Console. And if we go back to the code, now I told you that was a table. Well, and this is how easy it is to create a table, right? I instantiate a table, I add columns, and then here's that spinner that we talked about. And so there are different types. So this was showing dots. And let's see if Rider's yeah. So Rider is not gonna be totally cooperate right now, but there's an enumeration of what that spinner will look like. So if I change that to *2 and I run this again, you'd see a kind of slightly different spinner. But then I just go through the zip codes, what am I doing? I'm hitting multiple APIs here because the zip gets me the coordinates, and I have to pass the coordinates into the API, into the actual fetching the weather. So a couple of API calls here. And then when I have my data, I just do an add row. And it just matches up and it just works. And then once I've got my table populated, I just write it out using ANSI console. There is another, and I'll go to the website and show you this one. There is one that will draw the table live, which is interesting. I don't think it's super practical for these demos, but I'll show you on the website, and it's something you'd have to decide if is that cool or not. So, and here's the first bar chart. Same kind of thing, right? I'm specifying the label. I want green, bold, underline to say temperature. So if I go back over here and I run this, you can see it's that part right there. But I didn't have to do anything fancy to get bold, green, underline text on the screen. I just used the markup. I centered the label, and then I just add the items. And again, you can see there's the color enum, which I could change the colors of those things. I would say I made the over 80 degrees red. And then I did another breakdown chart. Well, that was a bar chart. And then this is a breakdown chart. And it's the same kind of thing. In this case, I gave it a width, but I just added items to it. And you can see both of these, I'm just writing out what that control is. Now I could do what I did with the table. I could instantiate the thing first, do what I want to, and then later on I could write it like I did the table. Yeah, and then I'm done with that one. So this is a kind of a more practical, hey, I'm going to hit an API, I'm going to do something, I'm going to fetch data from the database, I'm going to pull it back, show it in the table. And the cool thing is, if we wanted to, it wouldn't be hard to, in this table, if I had the data, and I'd have to look for it, but link to each one of these. So then you could, control. In order to click a link in the console, you have to control click it. But then you could be able to do that. You could have it right in the table, have any links you wanted to, and then go from there. So that's that one. What's this? Okay, so this one we're gonna get to this one because there are. I'll show you. So one of the other things you can do other than outputting those controls is you can. One of the things it will do is it will format an exception nicely for you, right? So the top one is if you just did a console.writeLine exception, it's going to be this thing here. We've all read exceptions. We can all find what we need. But when you look at the bottom one, this is using Spectre's exception. There's a control to write out an exception, and it'll highlight it there. And you can control the colors that you want in the exception, like what keywords are one color, things like that. So, but I think that's a lot easier to look at and read than the normal one. Well, that's what I was illustrating there. There's a table. Okay, this is another one, and I have more demos, so I'll go back over here. So I forget what my argument is. I got to look. No, this one. Basic. Okay, so this one. And if you guys knew this, this is a little tip. If you're doing a .NET run from the command line, you want to pass arguments into it. You do -- and then the arguments, which is what I'm doing here. So if this was compiled, I would just say exe name space parameter. But this is just a shortcut if I'm just doing a .NET run. So this is one that I have a bunch of things going on. But again, this is showing, hey, here is using the native .NET stuff we talked about. So kind of from that first slide. So I can ask, what's your name? How old are you? Right. And again, this is showing what a normal exception looks like. Now, I have that same code specterized. And so I'm going to pass in a different argument this time to get the Spectre version of it here. And again, we already kind of went over these colors, how that works, but this is where it's going to get kind of cool. So I can ask using, bear with me just for a second here. Prompt. So ANSI console not only has markup, markup line, write line, those types of things. It has a couple of other cool functions that make it really easy. One of them is called ask. So I could say ANSI console.ask, and you'll notice I'm giving it a type. So I'm saying whatever this input is, it has to be that type. So what's your name? And I want it to be a string. And so that's what's going on here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to enter that. But there's something else I can do when I do an ask. So down here at the bottom of the screen, I can also have on an ask a default. So I can ask what their name is. Well, again, a default for a name doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless I have it from somewhere. But imagine a case where you want to ask them for some information where you could provide a default value. So in this case, what's your name? If I don't enter anything, then it's going to take Michael as the default. If I enter Chad, it'll take Chad. So I'm just going to hit enter here, and it'll take that default. And you can see here, it says you entered Michael. Now, here's where it gets cool on the ask is not only can I give it a type. So remember my initial code where it was like, ask what my age was, and I had to do a parse int and all that kind of nonsense. And then if it didn't parse, then I just kind of fell out of that if then, right? I didn't have a loop that said, well, no, ask them again. Well, Spectre makes that so much easier. So I'm going to do that. But so it shows, yep, you entered that. Cool. Simple validation is built in, which is really kind of neat. So I added validation, and I'll show you what the code looks like. This says you can enter an age, but it's got to be between 16 and 123. 123 is the age of the oldest person, at least when I did this demo, age of the oldest person on the planet. So here, if I say 125, it's going to say, nope, sorry. So that's an error message that I provided. So you must be younger than the oldest person alive. Okay, so if I entered 123, I'd be good. But it also has to be between 16 and 123. So if I enter 15, I also have a validation on that end of it too to say, no, hold on, you can't enter that. You can't enter 15. You have to be at least 16. So I'll do my age again. It's gonna be like, cool, you're good to go. And then here's another one. Another prompt at the bottom. Are you sure you entered the correct age? Yes, no, with yes being the default. So I can ask these questions and I can just, they can enter. Now I could have no be the default and have it loop right back around and go enter your age again. But in this case, yep, I entered the correct. And again, this just fills out what we already talked about with Spectre. This is what that screenshot came from. But in this case, I threw an exception, and you can see, again, it looks a lot nicer than if you just did a console.writeline.ex, which is what we all name our exceptions and our exception handlers, right? So that's what that would look like. Now, if we go back to the code, I want to show this. So this is the method that shows you how to ask things. And so this, you see that okay? Okay. So this is, how old are you? This is the validation. So it's a text prompt. I'm going to tell it I want this to be an int. I'm going to give it a validation error message, kind of the general error message. That's not a valid age. And then down here is where I can actually build the validation. So if I enter a value that's less than or equal, that's less than 6, less than or equal to. So what if I entered 16? I haven't tried that. I might have a bug. But anyway, you can see here, here's a validation that says there's that condition. Here's the one that's that condition. If both those conditions are met, then we'll get a successful message. And then you can see all I do is a markup line. Hey, you entered the age. And this is the confirm. This is the confirm that's going to give you the yes or no, and with a default of yes. And so we have ask, we have confirm, we have write line, we have markup line. All of these hang off ANSI console. And then this is what So for the exception, if I want to write an exception and let Spectre mark it up to look good, I would just say ANSI console.write exception. So a bunch of methods hang off ANSI console that are they just make it easier, right? So that's all I did here. I just had a try catch. I threw an exception, and then I just wrote it out using the write exception. What else here? This is the extra stuff. This is all the stuff we looked at earlier, the underlines and strike throughs and things. Hello world. So that is a kind of the bulk of Spectre.Console. There's not a whole lot. Yeah.
I missed it, but what's the standard for the, I guess the emoji? Is there like a list somewhere of them, or?
I think I just went out to, I think it'll render any of them. So if you just go out, I found a website.
Yeah, I was kind of curious, like where you got the list of, smiling face or.
Yeah, I think I probably Googled and said I need the emojis for these, which I'll tell you. So when I was doing the zip codes today, I had the initial list of zip codes, and I wanted more. Right, I actually wanted to get like 100. So I went to Copilot, right, and I was like, I need a list of. I wanted the zip codes for every capital in the U.S. But I only wanted the 5-digit zip code. And it's like, I can't do that, right? And I haven't tried the app with a 9-digit zip code, so I could have a bug. I don't know, but so I did ask ChatGPT to give me a comma delimited list of zip codes, which I pulled in. The neat thing is you can do the same thing with this. Give me 10 sample emojis or whatever, and it'll do that. But yeah, there's no enum. It's really just, I think I went out to a website. And actually, you know what I could do? Hold on. Anyone know the shortcut on anyone a Mac user in here? What's the shortcut to bring up the emoji screen? Do you know? I forget what it is. It's like. Yeah.
I think it's Windows period.
Well, that's.
He's on a Mac.
I'm on a Mac, and but it's
command control period.
That's what I kind of thought too. Anyway, I bet you I could pull those up and paste them in, and it would work. But I'll spend some time on that here in a little bit.
Command control space.
Command control space. Let's see. Hey. Oops. Yeah, I'm not gonna. This is going live that I didn't want to go. That this is. I'll figure it out and see. But I bet you could copy and paste into here and it would work. Okay, so that's part of that demo. What I want to do is there's more to this one. So we did basic, we did Spectre. I want to do chart. And you can see we have already seen this one. The other cool thing you can do is not only are there these charts like this, you can also render a calendar, which is kind of neat too. So in this case, what I have is a JSON file with a bunch of important dates in it. And then my little prompt here is what year do you want to see? I'm going to give it a year, I'm going to give it a month. And it's going to highlight in those months those special dates that I have listed in that JSON file. And I'll show you how that works. So if we do 2024, I'll do October. And you can see it renders the calendar and it highlighted the 2 dates, my birthday and Halloween. Because of course, it's only 2 important things. And isn't your birthday in October too? No, yours is March or something. Yeah. But the cool thing is I can do what you don't want to see. I want to do 2024. Again, if we do 12, right, you can see Christmas Day, New Year's Day. So I can't do anything. I can't click those and do anything. I'd have to do a lot more work to be able to get that to work. But again, this is something that you could do. You know, if you wanted to read from the database and say, hey, when were the jobs for this thing run last, right? And you could pull it back and you could have it listed in the calendar. I want to show what that looks like. That one is going to be.
Is there a way to click on it and do something?
I think so. I think it's going to be a lot of work to do. I started to play with that, but I didn't get too far with it. Okay, so this is what this looks like. So I had it prompt for the dates file, but then I just hard coded it because I just didn't care. Oh no, hold on. We're looking at chart. Here we go. So this is, I'm gonna pull in that JSON file. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And then I group them. Here we go. Here we go. So I create a new calendar. I give it a year. I give it a month. I loop through these important dates and I just add a calendar event and that's it. You can see here my highlight style, I said yellow bold, which is why they look the way they do. The important dates looks like this. So I could add more. I could pull these, again, think of it. You could pull them from a database. You could do anything you wanted to. I just happen to hard code. And the reason the JSON's formatted this way, because I want to show another component and I wanted to make sure you saw what this JSON looked like.
You put your birthday in my quarters.
Hush your mouth. Hush your mouth, Chad. I put Mother's Day for crying out loud.
He does have a really tough day.
May is her birthday, our anniversary, and Mother's Day. So I get hit in May. Thanks, Chad. Okay, so back over here. But that's so you can see here's where I do the 2 asks: what year, what month, and then new up the calendar. Add those calendar events, and then I just write it out. So that's how that works. So again, we've got tables, we've got calendars, we've got charts, we've got all sorts of really cool things. I want to go back up because I forget what the other, so we'll do JSON in a second. Oh yeah, rule was the one I was really kind of getting access what the slide is. Then we've all had to do this kind of thing, right? Where you need to divide some output on the screen. So you're like dash, 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 or, you know, there's other ways to shorten that, but we've all done that. And then you're like, are they balanced? There is a rule control and it will center it for you. It'll do that. You can specify there's different lines you can do. So you want them double lines if you want them, you know, anything like that. And that's what we have here is there's the difference, right? I did a right line, this one, and I did my dashes. Or I could just do, hey, here's a new rule. So I'm trying to output things to the screen. One of those is obviously a little easier than the other one. I did want to show this too. So here I did another one of those charts. And what this did is it looked in my important dates JSON file and figured out how many were holidays, how many were celebrations, how many were, I don't know what the deadline is. What's the deadline? Oh, is that tax day? Oh yeah, you're right. But again, just another way to visualize the data that we have. Okay, so then I did rule, I did chart, I did the calendar. Is one more. So this one I want to do is JSON. Hold on. Oh, yeah, this is the dumb one. So this is the one where I have to give it the file name. Okay. So what this is going to do is render JSON to the screen, and it's going to format it. So if we remember what my file looks like, it looks like that. So if I use the control and I render it, what did I do? I feel like bear with me just for a second. I ran all of these before I came over here. Have you used Upgrade Assistant? It's a global tool, so it's super cool. So if you have old demos that are in .NET 6 or 7, you can just run this, install a global tool, Upgrade Assistant. Oh man, yeah. Here we go. So that's the one that worked. There we go. Okay. So you see the little Christmas tree showed the file was loading and it's gone, right? But that's how quick it was. But here it is formatted, and I have some control over the formatting. But you remember in my file, it's everything is on one line. So every one of these is on one line, and this just formats it in a nice way. So you could be really easy to write a generic console app, and there are some out there. You could write your own though, to say render this JSON to the screen. And I actually have this. I thought I had it in a frame, but again, it's this one JSON. So I have the spinner, and you can see. Remember, we talked about the different types. It showed a Christmas tree. It probably went by pretty quick. And I could probably, see, I actually slowed it down so it would show. I'll do it again so we can see it. And then it's just a new JSON text and then an ANSI console write using that control, and it dumps it out to the screen. So do that again. There's a little Christmas tree loading the file, and then there it is. So lots of stuff we can do in Spectre.Console. What's very cool is that if you go out to the repo, there are the instructions for doing this .NET tool restore, .NET example. In fact, let me see if that works. I'll show you what that looks like. .NET example. .NET tool restore. I might need to be in the. Yeah, I got to be in the. I got to be in the repo. Did I pull the source for Spectre? I don't know if I pulled the source. So let's do that. If this doesn't take too long. But long story short, you're gonna be able to run all of the demos that they ship. I've done this before, trust me. least Wi-Fi is fast. .NET tool restore. Oh. Okay. I will leave that up to you guys to do because it's complaining about SDK versions. But the fact is what'll happen is you will get, when you do that .NET restore, you will get essentially a list of samples you can run, and you'll pick it and it'll build it and it'll run it right there. So for every single thing that is listed here, so if we look at things like, this is that live display I was talking about, right? Kind of neat. And it shows you how to do all those. You can do them async, do them all that. The different progress bars you can do, which are kind of cool. This is the one status that I used. But there's, again, the text, the selection and multi-selection. Multi-select is what I did. Tables, and you could render things to, like the tree is kind of cool too. But you can get all those examples. I didn't want to go through every one of these, but you can go through all those examples and see how they work. The canvas image, this is the one, again, it's cool that you can do that, because I think these are all PNGs. They're just ugly. And there's the enum for all the colors. I told you there was a lot, so you can go right to the docs there and get the colors. There are things like frames you can put around things, and this shows all those styles that you can do. So there's a lot that they add. So here are some of the emojis. Yeah, right there. This is where I went. They actually give you an official emoji list right here. So there you go. You can do anything you want there. And the different spinners. So the docs are great. Check the docs out. Pull the repo. Restore the examples. This is a relatively new Mac, so I'm like it said, I'm probably just missing an SDK that I need. So there's that. I do want to take a little bit of time. Let me flip back here for a second, and there's the calendar. Okay, there's the key takeaways, right? Spectre.Console is super easy to install and use. It's a NuGet package or 4, depending on what functionality you need or want. It's mostly cross-platform. You see everything I did here on my Mac. If it worked on my Mac, it's going to work on your Windows machine. Like I just believe that. If I wanted to, I'd spin up my Linux VM and see. But if it works on my Mac, it's going to work on my Linux VM too. Rich set of easy-to-use components. The image support is. One thing I didn't talk about, because it is a bigger topic, is support for command line handling. So if you want to support more complex command line operations with arguments and parameters, there's a whole separate Spectre library for that, to do those types of things. So you could.
The new one that Microsoft has built. The new command line.
I haven't.
Okay, because I was curious what you thought compared.
Oh,
You know,
I haven't
done the Spectre. I've been playing with the new one. It requires a lot of work, but it works really nicely.
Yeah, but that way you could do, like if you've done anything with like the Azure CLI, right? You have, dash server name and this and that, and you can do all those types of things in a very easy way. Now, everything I did here, if we look at my code, was like the super hacky way of, hey, else if arg0 is Spectre, right? Now, I could have built that using the Spectre command line handling library. I just chose not to. I was looking for easy when I was doing those demos. Let's see. There's my information. But before we get there, I do want to show one more library that I didn't talk about. And that is, so Spectre is great for that static data going to the screen, right? Fantastic for that. And some very basic input. But I'd mentioned to you that I had when I came up on QBasic, QuickBasic, right? Those kind of text-based windowed apps. And so there's another library called terminal.gui, which lets you do stuff like that. So I could type in my information. I can do that. I can essentially click a button. It'll pop up a message box. I think this is super cool because this really reminds me of a lot of the stuff that I did when I was first learning. And the cool thing is, like, you can drag the window. Now, it's not rendering that great on my Mac, which again is one of those things, right? I bet on the Windows it would render probably a little bit better. But you can create your own windows. So if you wanted to have a GUI running in your terminal window to do stuff, this terminal.gui is a cool way to do that. I don't know. Somehow this turned on mouse tracking, and I think this is just a Command Y. Okay, we're gonna just ignore that because that's just a Mac thing that I did. You go away. Okay. So we'll go back to here. There's the code. I'll put this one up, but we'll talk about. Anyone have any questions at all? It's a cool library. It's super easy to use. I know most people aren't writing console apps unless we're just nerding out on our own. We just want something that's going to help make some process easier for us. Not a lot of clients are saying, hey, make the console app really cool. If they even say the words console app to you. So I think it's a fun library to use. I worked on a installer for commercial software, and we had a command line installer, and we didn't use Spectre at the time because Spectre wasn't available to us. We had to roll our own to do all these complex things in this installer, and having Spectre on would have been just the coolest thing ever. But that was a fun. It's not often someone says you can write an app and it's just a console app. Instead, it's web apps and things like that. So, any questions at all, Chad? Anyone?
Questions?
How are we doing on time?
We're doing perfect.
Cool. All right. Well, there's my contact info. I appreciate everyone's time on this hot day. Everyone coming in and good stuff. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, thanks. And sure enough, I mean, talking about console apps, I mean, like, while we won't necessarily have our customers, whether internal or external, I mean, his customers are, he actually has customers, whereas my customers are, people in my own company. But, prime example, like, I've been writing, I've been doing a lot of DevOps the last couple of months. And, so that's all IT stuff. And, I'm not going to go and do a UI to fire off Terraform scripts or to, checking code into DevOps. And that's where, Spectre.Console is really nice. And I only knew about it because I saw he was going to do a talk about it. But it is really nice. And that's, so any other questions?
Cool.
So everyone on the screen, thank you for joining us online. Like I say, next month it will be it's 18th, if I remember right. 17th, 18th, whatever that Thursday is. And we'll have David Jarrett. All right, so end the stream.